You guys have a Ford F-150 with the vacuum actuated four-wheel drive, and every once in a while you get a clacking noise or a clattering noise coming from the front end, and you maybe turn the four-wheel drive switch on, it goes away, or you let off the gas and it kind of dies down a little bit. Well, I'm going to show you how we're going to check that. Stay tuned. So the four-wheel drive on these F-150s, and I don't know exactly the model years, but if I can find it, I'll put it up here. They run on vacuum, meaning as your vehicle is running, there's vacuum created by the engine, and it pulls off the four-wheel drive actuator on the hub so that your wheels aren't locked in. If there's a leak in the vacuum system somewhere, then it can't pull off that four-wheel drive hub actuator enough that it's not engaged. So sometimes the teeth are trying to engage and it's just rubbing the teeth, like a grinding the gears type of thing. So what we do is we've got to check the vacuum, see if it's holding. If it's not, we've got to start a couple different places to check and see where it's leaking. Now, you don't always have to have a vacuum gauge, but it helps. And I'm going to leave a link down in the description box below so that you guys can pick one of these up very, very cheap from my Amazon affiliate, just a handheld vacuum pump. And it will allow you to test each front wheel to see if there's vacuum. Sometimes you will have vacuum there on the pump, but not throughout the system. Couple things to check. Let me show you. Now, my truck here is a 2011, and it has a vacuum switch right here up on the firewall right beside the brake booster, and on it is this one-way valve, and this one-way valve has three connections. So one is the actual vacuum, which is here in the bottom, and then two outlets that will control your front actuator hubs. If this one-way valve stops working, then it won't hold vacuum enough to engage the four-wheel drive hub actuators on your front wheels. And the simple way to check that is to unplug it and note where the lines go. And on the blue end, just clean it off and blow and suck on it, and you should see if the one-way valve is working. I'm gonna try and do this so you guys can see it. So this is your four-wheel drive actuator hub. There's your axle going through and your spindle. These are the vacuum lines that come off. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna pull that off. They just come off. And the big one, you're gonna put your vacuum pump on and pump it up. See if it holds vacuum. So let's do that. Okay, so we got our vacuum pump hooked up, so we're gonna pump it up. And you can see that it's starting to leak off as soon as I let go. And that tells me that the four-wheel drive actuator hub itself is not holding. So see, it just dropped past a certain point, and now the axle's turning. And there's the noise you get when it just doesn't have quite enough vacuum to pull it off and not take dogs. So that's what we're fixing today. So let's get the truck up in the air, and we'll get that changed out, and I'll show you a simple trick to not ruining the new actuator as you're putting it in. So let's get this thing apart. All right, so some of the tools that you're gonna need is a pair of pliers to pull this dust cap off the center, and I believe it's a 12mm nut that holds your axle in place there. We got a 21mm on the tie rod, 19mm on the ball joint. We've already got the vacuum line pulled off. You're gonna need I believe it's an 8mm socket to get your ABS line off of the side of the spindle here. And we're also going to be taking off the hub actuator itself, which is this aluminum piece, and those are 8mm there. So when we get this thing all tore apart, the only thing that's going to be holding it into place is going to be the ABS wire and the brake line, but the bottom ball joint as well, because we're going to take all of this and kind of move it off to the side, and that should give us plenty of room to pull that axle out of there and then be able to get to the hub actuator. So I'm going to do that, and I'll be right back with you. All right, so we've got this thing kind of being held up here by the brake line. It's not a whole lot of weight. It's not doing any damage, but we were able to get the axle out of the hub. So now we've just got these 8mm, there's three of them, to pull out of there. We'll pull that apart and I'll show you where the failure is. So what's been known to happen with these things is because they're sealed on the inside with a piece of rubber, well, the rubber gets old, brittle, and it breaks. And this is what happens. It lets go and it can't seal anymore around here. This is the one we just took off. This was the passenger side, and it's still together, as you can tell, but it's not holding a vacuum. So that tells me that seal is potentially starting to fail on that one. So when you're putting the new hub on, what you want to make sure is that you get it lined up in the proper direction, because this has got to come up. But put this on and lock it onto the axle first, because if you don't, you risk misaligning and tearing that piece of plastic off. It will no longer create a vacuum, and then you're stuck doing the job all over again with a part that you broke. So that's what we're going to do, is we're going to get that slid into place, and then we'll put the axle back together and reverse the process that we just took everything apart. Last week we put one in that side because it was clattering, and very, very shortly we're doing one on the driver's side for the same reason. So if you've got yourself an F-150 and the front hubs are starting to clatter like that, well, this should give you a pretty good indicator of what to look for and maybe even how to fix it. So I hope I helped you out, guys. If this video helped you out, make sure you hit thumbs up, make sure you're subscribed, and stay focused on the windshield, not the rearview mirror. God bless. Let's do it again real soon.